In all of Canada's history until 2020, only 4 TV dramas made by and about Black Canadians had made it to air on a major broadcaster. Canada's screen output has been predominantly white, male, and heterosexual, even though Black people have been part of Canada's population since before Confederation. The system is broken, or more accurately, it was designed to exclude Black creators and Black-focused content from the Canadian screen canon. So in 2021, the Black Screen Office set out to identify the central issues that create barriers for Black screen industry workers and Black audiences. While Black people are uniquely marginalized by Canada's screen industry, the BSO recognized that there are common experiences across all underrepresented groups. Examining and addressing inclusion and authentic representation holistically would be critical for the industry to become truly equitable. The BSO launched 3 research projects: Being Counted, Being Heard, and Being Seen. With the knowledge gained from this research, BSO can work with decision makers on tools and strategies to dismantle the industry's anti-Black practices and improve authentic representation overall. The 3 research projects look at the issues from different angles. Being Counted looks at audiences, specifically Black, Indigenous, and people of color audiences, whose preferences are usually hidden within general population data in traditional audience surveys. This basically makes them invisible to screen content decision makers. Through Being Counted, these decision makers gain insight into who they are missing, as well as these viewers' habits and preferences. Being Heard looks inward at the Canadian screen industry. It offers data on the prevalence of Black workers and their experiences. Black industry workers have not been examined in any meaningful way until now, and Being Heard will help identify ways to support their success. Being Seen looks at Canada's screen industry content. Inspired by Imaginative's protocols and pathways, Being Seen explores the perspectives of screen industry professionals and members of the viewing public who are Black, people of color, 2S LGBTQIA+, and people with disabilities. From across the country, more than 400 individuals from these communities participated in Being Seen focus groups and interviews in both English and French. Participants included members of the screen industries as well as the general public. For the Children's Media Report, we talked to children's media creators from the 4 communities, and also parents and children and youth ranging in age from 6 to 17. Knowing that individuals have multiple dimensions, BSO took an intersectional approach to this research, which allowed participants to talk about any aspects of their identity. Letting participants choose allowed them to bring their full selves to these discussions. BSO also divided communities into subcategories whenever possible, such as a blind or deaf focus group within the people with disabilities category. This allowed for deeper exploration of specific communities. Within these Being Seen safe spaces, participants spoke with passion, strength, vulnerability, and at times, tears. They provided valuable insights into how Canada's screen industries can and must change to better reflect them and their needs. Many common themes emerged across the communities, as well as challenges unique to each community group. The result of this research is the Being Seen Core Report, which captures the universal themes shared across all 4 communities. There are also 5 companion reports, 1 in each community, and a Children's Media Report. Each report offers anecdotal insights on representation, as well as clear directives for industry leaders on how to create and commission more authentic and inclusive content. The data and perspectives that Being Counted, Being Heard, and Being Seen reveal establish an evidence-based foundation for change. This BSO research can and should support industry leaders to create and approve content that authentically represents the full diversity of Canada's communities. We also expect them to prompt more discussion and action on the structural changes that are needed to increase representation on set, on screen, and in industry boardrooms.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our first Shaw Rocket Fund Children's Content Creator Workshop. It's also the first Being Seen workshop. So we're all very excited about this. I'm Kelly Lynn Ashton. If you are new to Being Seen, I'm the lead researcher on the project. And so visual description, I'm a tanned woman with gray hair, sort of short red glasses. I've got a blue background with stairs behind me, and you will occasionally see my cat going up and down the stairs. And I'd like to introduce our two facilitators who are going to be working with me on this, Jiro Okada and Kai Littlewhite. Do you two want to introduce yourselves briefly?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jiro. I'm based in Toronto. I'm a writer, story editor, producer. I've worked on the animation industry for about 15 years now, beginning with Guru Studio in Toronto. And now I've been working strictly as a freelance writer for the last 5 years or so. Visual description, I'm wearing a black polo shirt. I have short black hair, wearing light rimmed glasses. And in the background, I have some shelves with plants and a little special guest plushie, a yellow plushie named Squidgy from the show Just in Time. So that's me, and over to Kai.
Thanks, Jiro. Okay, I'm Kai Littlewhite. I'm also based out of Toronto. I'm originally from Jamaica, so if you hear an accent, that's where it's from. And I let's do the visual description before I forget that part. I'm wearing a like navy blue shirt. It's really long beaded earrings. My hair is in braids with blonde tips. I have like milk chocolate skin, and I think that's about it. A big smile very often. I am a writer, producer, and a bit of a narwhal in the kids space. I grew up in production, and so I've had pretty much every job in a live action set. And I've worked in scripted, unscripted, features, commercials, music videos, and then I fell in love with kids content and ended up doing a master's in child development and education. I'm an OCT and RECE. I'm also a curriculum developer, and that includes also teaching in the classroom from toddlers to teens and developing curriculum for them, including games. And I love to entertain them, so I also work as a writer. I've worked at CBC Kids and Gary's Magic Fort, and CBC Kids' website and their games and blogs. I'm creating my own projects, and I work on others as a writer and a director. And yeah, producer, and that's Kai from Toronto. And so back to Kevin.
Thank you. Actually, just wanted, before we go on any further, do a land acknowledgement, because we do want to honor the land that we're on. The Black Screen Office is located on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nation. However, as a virtual meeting, we want to also acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations who call this land home and host us today and every day. Because I understand, the people here could be anywhere in the country. We're all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We'd also like to acknowledge those of us who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. And if you've read the reports or seen any of our panels, you know that we're very indebted to the Imaginative On-Screen Protocols and Pathways document, which inspired us to do all of this work. So this is all part of our ongoing path on reconciliation and indebtedness to that community. So won't go into a lot of detail about the reports and how they came about, because hopefully you've all read them and you've read the directives. What we're going to do here now is talk more about how to actually implement them. So we'll go through an overview of, for this workshop, the core themes and children's media directives, And then working with Kai and Jiro, talk about specifics about how a children's content creator can actually implement them. And I first, before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about vocabulary, because we have gotten some questions about that. So when we talk about identity and phrases like people of color, they're umbrella terms, they're not identity. It's, people don't tend to think of themselves as a person of color, but those phrases are used as a way to group groups of people who have similar experiences. You'll see, especially when I talk about Statistics Canada data, that the government is still using visible minority. We have to use that phrase because the government is still using it. There's a lot of other words that are being used: marginalized, underrepresented. One word that I am really not happy about is the use of the word diverse as a synonym for Black and people of color, because diversity is about all of us. And that's what we're all trying to do, is to create a level playing field and an equal landscape for all of us. And we have to do that with some targeted strategies and effort towards those who are not getting equitable representation. So diversity, when we talk about that, we're talking about everybody. And then another phrase that may not be sort of common use to everybody is intersectionality. It's something that has been important in this research, because we don't put people into silos or make them choose aspects of their identity. We always ask people to bring all of themselves. So while we're looking at Black, people of color, to us LGBTQIA+, and people with disabilities, we recognize that there are different layers of oppression, particularly for people who have multiple identities. And we ask that all of that be respected. Then the other one is the concept that authenticity is a work in progress. And I don't think I can emphasize this enough. We're all learning. And the most important thing is for all of us to keep learning and have that open mind. Terminology changes. Our understanding of identity changes. I learned over the course of not even the research, after the research, it was pointed out to me that the phrase Latinx can't be pronounced by Spanish speakers. So not a great term. That just kind of blew my mind. And so it's about, okay, we learn and we share and we learn from each other. So and that's why we're doing these workshops, because I want to learn from people who are attending as much as you're learning from us. So two last terminology words. One is, we're going to be talking a lot about this week. What's a stereotype? And it's defined as a commonly held belief that is overly simplistic or prejudiced view about a group of people. What I found really interesting is that the word actually comes from printing, and it refers to using the same plate over and over again until the printed page only vaguely resembles the original. That, to me, that's what a stereotype is. Then the other term that we'll talk about is tokenism, which is making a symbolic but not authentic gesture to representation. So now let's talk about some of the data, and I'll go through this really quickly so we can get to the good stuff. So this is why it's important that we take a closer look at representation. 22%, and these are 2016 statistics. In the next coming months, we're going to be getting 2021 statistics, and I expect that the percentages are going to be higher. 22% are visible minorities, 51 and 49 in Vancouver. What people tend to forget is the high percentages outside of Toronto, Vancouver. So 34% and 28% in Calgary and Edmonton. 4% are to us LGBTQIA plus, 22 are to people with disabilities. The percentage of marriages that are multiracial is at 7%, but because of the way StatsCan defines it, I think that's actually underreporting. So these are, and the percentage of multiracial marriages is very relevant to the percentage of multiracial children and families that we all need to keep an eye on as we're creating content. Okay, so we can take that slide down and get onto the first of the directives. We're going to talk first about authentic storytelling and what is it and the impact on kids. Because one of the first directives in the Children's Media Report is to consider the impact that a story, character designs, voice performance will have on the kids. Might they be hurt by a stereotype or missing representation? Are you missing an opportunity to do better? And this is illustrated, and have the next slide with some of the quotes. We heard a lot from the kids about the impact. So here's, the first one is how, the kids are the feeling that when Muslim kids see themselves, they're being portrayed only as terrorists, and that impacting them. And even the kids recognizing that what they see will impact their behavior. Not seeing themselves at all, which is a common response from kids with disability, because it would make them feel more normal, to feel included. So there are two issues. One is misrepresentation and stereotypes, and the other is just complete missing representation. That's the end of my piece. You can take down that slide. And I'll hand it over to Jiro and Kai.
Thanks, Kelly Lynn. Yeah, I guess I can start with just saying that, after reading the report and, those quotes as well, the thing that hit me was that these are the words coming straight from our audience, the children. It's not like parents who are like writing angry emails to the broadcasters and saying, hey, this is an issue. We're hearing directly from the kids. And if we're in this together in content creation for children, it was really eye-opening to see that this is the impact that what we write, what we produce, what we put on the screen can have on our audience. Was really eye-opening, and it was a reality check for me, to a good reminder of why it's important to consider all these things and to better ourselves in what we do. So yeah, Kai, did you want to add anything before we dive in further?
Yeah, I think it was something that had come up in the course of a project we were working on, and the idea of assimilation or assumed assimilation, in that there are a lot of universals, and we always want to hit that those universal emotions and experiences, but understanding that with all those similarities there are differences, and it's important to acknowledge those differences, understand those differences, and to meet people, find a middle ground of coexistence that acknowledges those differences, not to just assume, oh, well, everyone must be exactly the same. This experience must be the same. There's not going to be anything unique about it if you're from this background or another background. And that's a lot of what we're talking about, how to really find the universality, but then honor the differences and have that be done authentically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess question to everyone here, can you, what comes to mind when you start hearing about this, or when you've read the report? Could you picture, or do you know of any consequences from, potentially harmful stereotyping? Could you think of any, how this could impact the audience, how it could impact children? Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to share?
Even in the chat, I will read it.
Oh, hi, Georgina.
Unmute
Hi, sorry, I was
yourself.
just spying, but I'm listening now.
Is there anything in the chat? No.
Hi, I'm Zainab. I really identified with, I've been really reassessing my relationship with my Islamic background. I'm Turkish background. And obviously through adult content, you see the terrorist stereotype way too much. And in some of the shows that I loved watching, and now we're reassessing those. And I'm also reassessing those through my kid and what we're seeing on television. I think that one really stuck to me because I'm not the only one. I know that a lot of people see that. And it's become a big problem where Muslim children or children who have Muslim background are having to re-identify themselves with a different character because that character is not being portrayed as a positive character or as a good influence or anything like that. So that's one thing that I think about almost every day through my own identity, but I also think about through how are we going to shift this narrative in television, but specifically in children's television and in an authentic way, because I really appreciated the tokenism conversation because we can just throw in a bunch of characters as much as we want. A character with a hijab and all that, and still not tell that authentic story. So that's why I'm here. I'm very excited to be able to marry that representation with that authentic storytelling and the depths of those characters and the intersectionality that we can really explore in a really cool way that's funny and exciting and all that. So that was long-winded, but yeah, that's what I identified and what I took from the reports and really resonated with me. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for sharing, Zainab. I just realized as well as I was listening, I don't think we'll often see so much negative stereotypes in children's media because we do have gatekeepers. We have, the broadcasters, levels of execs and producers. And, I think we can't all assume that everyone's doing this for for good. And so there are gatekeepers to ensure that we're not doing such negative stereotyping and things like that. But one of the things is that, Kelly Lynn mentioned it, it's like a non-representation is also a big thing too, not even like putting certain groups of people on screen. So that's like one thing to also keep in mind as well.
There's an interesting thing just when you're talking about that, and I'm getting kind of conversational now. And when you said about gatekeepers, and sometimes there's a very obvious things you said, like you're in a kids show, especially if you're, although if you're going in preschool, you're probably not going to have, or Bridge, you're probably not going to have a supervillain who's going to be really dangerous. But there was something I remember my stepdaughter pointed out when she was a kid and she was watching a particular show, and she was like, all the villains have mustaches and beards. And I remember a male kids content creator saying that people are like, no one's going to buy your show with you and a mustache and a beard. It was like, what? They're like, yeah, it's creepy. And it's like, just even that, the association that's being created with kids of mustache beard is bad. And, you think about that with male teachers and in the schools and kindergarten, you know what I mean? Like just how it perpetuates that you think it's nothing, but then, what other little subconscious, like little things are happening there? Like, who are the people with glasses always smart? Are they never athletic? You know what I mean? We start perpetuating. You see it in one of the examples that one of the kids gave. I don't know if we put this one up yet, about the little boy who mentioned, there's a little boy who mentions that he always saw kids who were like him in a very negative light, and he thought this was all he could be, because he never saw any other example of himself. And it just talks about the idea that you have to see it to even imagine that you can be it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I noticed the other day that Lego figures, often the baddies also have like stubble or like facial hair. It's such a subconscious thing. You never really think about that.
Or even the colors. You think about in animation, when you have the villains, it's like very often the villains will be, in black or in purple, but then I think Black Panther was black and purple. You know what I mean? And like what you associate, and sometimes it's those really simple little things. And of what colors are you associating with? Like, are the girls always in pink? Do they always have the big lashes? You know, and it's sometimes those very little things of do the Black girls always have a big afro? You know what I mean? What exactly are you showing? And it's yeah. I don't know if anybody else has ever had any of those little small things that don't seem big. It's in the land of, I think, the idea of microaggression, where it's not like super obvious in your face, microaggression, but it's those little like mosquito bites that, you know, like it kind of, or a little prick that kind of gets to you. It's, I don't know if anybody's had any experience like that who's here, where you've watched something and it's just super small, you can't put your finger on it, but it made you feel something. You want to share?
Georgina.
Hi, sorry, it's hard not to participate, you know. But I just want to
Please do.
and I find that people of color or whoever it is always like broken English. You notice it's like they're included, but it's like suddenly they just don't speak English, so you don't really see, or they have really, a really thick accent, but which is fine. But I just find that it's never, it's like the new immigrant, but they don't necessarily show people who have been there in Canada for a long time, just they wouldn't have an accent anymore. They speak, born and raised, they speak English. So I find it's just like a little thing, but it kind of irks me because I think if you didn't have, if you came from a small community where, you don't see people that are, not white, you just assume that they don't speak English. So it's one little thing.
Where are you really from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they speak slower to you, like, hi, my name is. Yeah.
And you think about how that it perpetuates into real life, like that's in the things that you see on screen, but then as kids, especially really young kids, are coming out into the world, and that's the expectation. You can see that in a classroom where you see kids saying to their classmate, where are you really from? Because you obviously can't be from here. Or even it goes further to teachers making assumptions about kids needing ESL. I mean, this trickles down into just how like the rest of the world is, but you think about what are you seeing in media? What is the starting point for both the kids and the parents and the adults being reaffirmed in what we're putting out there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think in those cases, like Georgina, what you brought up with the accents, I think I've noticed there's a fine line from, and people tend to overcompensate and say like, okay, we're going to represent this group. And then they make that extra effort in doing so. And it's well-intentioned, but in doing that, like, oh, we really want to make it clear that this person is from this of this identity. And then by doing that, they kind of take it too far to a point where it could be hurtful. And we'll talk a little bit later about, practical things we could do to avoid those things, such as, like bringing in consultants and stuff like that. But that's for a little bit later on. Kai and I prepared some examples to also spur on a bit more discussion. So maybe at this point, we could bring up the first one. So if we could bring up the scenario number 1 slide. So we wrote up a little character bio for perspective teen series, and full disclosure, I am not like a teen romance writer or anything like that, but I purposely chose to do something like this because I would rely on cliches. So it was kind of interesting exercise to see what kind of floats to the top of my head as we were doing this. So I'll just read it through. 12-year-old Lucy Chung may be the shortest kid in her class, but that doesn't mean she goes unnoticed. Growing up as the youngest of 4 siblings in a family running the busiest dim sum shop in town, Lucy knows how to get everyone's attention, whether it's through her picture-perfect report card or borrowing outfits from her K-pop obsessed sister, or just her booming voice. That's basically her superpower. She gets that from her papa, her grandma. It's hard not to hear her gossiping as she plays mahjong in the back room of the restaurant the moment you step through the doors. So this is just a sample character bio that was put together. Any thoughts on this? Are there any missed opportunities? Do you feel that it leans a certain way, or how does this make you feel? Any thoughts? Okay.
Just going to be the one to just say the first thing is, if I hadn't really met anyone who's East Asian, but I'd seen some stuff on TV, then this feels like it might fit a lot of the things that, you know, I see on TV a lot that are associated with East Asian characters. I see this stuff a lot with mahjong and K-pop, so this seems like a big poster things that you just associate, you stereotype along with East Asian.
I think it's really well written, but I can also, hi, I'm Phil. How's it going? It's really well written, but you know, you see the stereotypes kind of really jump out. And the one thing, mahjong, my only experience with mahjong is it being something in media to kind of show an Asian grandparent. It feels like that's the only time you really do ever see it. And I wish that I, you know, I knew how to play. I'm sure it's really fun, but it's just in my experience, that really is kind of the only thing. So it's funny when you can start to see kind of like the mile markers in the journey of this sentence that you're kind of hitting. And it's yeah, it's a good point.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Zaina, did you have something?
I also noted, I mean, it's a hard one because some people who are children of like immigrants get that whole needing to be picture perfect report card situation, big families and all that. But this is very obviously a like very pointing to that huge stereotype of East Asians, you know, needing to be, you know, the top of their class. And we've seen the stereotype many times before, whether it's a great stereotype, you know, those positive stereotypes that we are talking about, that still doesn't matter. It still puts a lot of pressure on the viewer to, you know, be like, oh, okay, well, you know, the person of this culture must, you know, only have to be a success and all that. And I think that makes it that negative stereotype, right? Because it doesn't portray the diversity of that group or the differences in that group of people and those people of color. So I appreciate that. Yeah, this was a big one because it was just like, boom. That's obviously this person has a picture perfect report card. So yeah, and I know a lot of us, I myself have made that mistake too, because it is definitely a stereotype that we have to really navigate well, right, and carefully and thoughtfully. So
Great, thank you.
I mean, one of the things that this also made me think of is the idea of when you're creating content and there's not a lot of it, this pressure as creators that you have on yourself to do the perfect representation. What's the one story that you're going to tell? It's going to tell all stories, give the backstory, the present story, the future story, all the things. And I think one thing that I've heard certain creators say is that, you know, take the pressure off of yourself to tell that one perfect character, and instead hope for a space where there will be multiple characters. And so everybody will get to tell a little version of it. And so you don't have to rely on this one character to be the only one that you see. You have many different shows, and even in the same show, well, we can brainstorm about what this could look like in this show. But yes, you have many different shows to have many different examples. So you can say, yeah, I saw that show and nobody played mahjong. And in that show, everybody was failing. And you have not just one idea of what it could be like to be a chung.
Mm-hmm. Question to throw a spanner in the works. Does it make a difference who wrote this? You know, like if this was written by, you know, second generation woman whose parents immigrated from Hong Kong, does that make a difference if it was them versus, you know, someone else of a different background? Does that change things? Yeah, I see somebody.
I'll jump in again into the silence. I would say that it does, because like I think when I was saying that it's well written, you know, I would love to read something like this if this was someone's experience. I would love to hear what the rest of the story is. Does that Does that make sense? But if I was to write this, it would not be authentic. Like I say, I would just be repeating. I would be doing that stereotype, the reprinting of the reprint of the reprint of the reprint. So
Yeah.
I think it does matter who writes it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's kind of the gray area, which was, this is designed purposely to fall in that gray area of like stereotype or being authentic. And it's another point that we're going to bring up later on, but like who has, the right to tell a story, or like, does it matter who tells a story? And if it's not that person's personal lived experience, how could you make it authentic, even if it's not the writer's experience?
It makes, I want to jump in. It makes me think of something just from a practical creator standpoint of the question that you're often asked about why this story, why you, why now kind of thing, and the pressure that's on creators to also like, sell your project, to be part of the marketing engine of your project. And so, on the good for business side, is that if you can state this personal connection, this is part of your story, you are now part of the marketing engine of this project. And it's a positive thing that you can build in. So you can say, yes, this is why you should tell this story, because this is your connection. You can speak about this. You can get these articles into whatever trades, or you can go on whatever talk shows and talk about it. But if you don't have that personal connection, then how are you going to sell to your audience? Why you, why now? I mean, there are many different ways of doing it, but again, if you think about your discoverability plan and how you're going to do that grassroots penetrating to new communities, you have to, I think, ask yourself that question, why you to tell this story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I guess another point is, if you're a potential buyer or like a development exec or someone, you could read something like this as a part of a one sheet, but, depending on what you know about the project, you might go, oh, this is stereotypical and I'm going to dismiss this, but, give it some thought, and you need to ask the right questions to find out, okay, where is this coming from and the why, because it could be authentic. And, parts of this I did draw from not my own lived experience, but I have close friends whose grandmothers played mahjong and speak very loudly because they're hard of hearing. It's not like a simplifying stereotype thing, but it's just a fact of their life and that sort of thing. So yeah, all this to say, you never know where this came from and that sort of thing. So as much as a writer, you could oversimplify and stereotype things, as a producer or a development exec, it's also, don't be quick to dismiss as well. It's just, that's why having conversations with creators is very important. And to Kai's point, if it is from an authentic place, make that absolutely clear, and that could be a good selling point for a project as well. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we can move on to, we fleshed this out a little bit further. So just to further on that first idea, using the same character, just kind of fleshed out a potential like episode synopsis. So this one goes like this. Lucy's piano recital falls on the exact same date and time as her school's championship basketball game, and she has to be there to cheer on the star player, aka her mega crush, Sean Kuminga. Will Lucy choose to let her ultra strict parents down, or will she give up her opportunity to get on Sean's radar before he gets closer to her arch nemesis, Rebecca Sanchez? Can you believe she's actually the team manager? She doesn't even know the rules. Again, very cliche, but just to get a point across. Any thoughts on this?
I want to know who wins the game.
Most importantly, yes. You'll have to tune in to find out. Maybe for this one, do you see any opportunities where things could be shifted or adjusted to break from a stereotype or like a cliche, or, possibly turn things on its head?
I'm going to assume Sean Kuminga is probably of some sort of African descent. Okay.
And full disclosure, again, the way I came up with the name, I went to the NBA All-Stars roster and went through this is what lazy writers do. That's what we do. And then we go through the roster. I'm like, that's a cool last name. I'm going to steal that. This sounds like a probable real person's name. And then, so that's how these things happen,
All right. Well, a lot of players in the NBA are Black, and that would make sense. I could see how you would assume that.
Right.
And I wish I was athletic. And I can't. It's so embarrassing. So I obviously am not going to relate to Sean personally.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you. If every person who is of African descent is an amazing athlete.
Yeah. I was just thinking as an exercise, as a writing exercise, one thing you could do with this is, think, okay, what is the complete opposite thing you could do? What if we turn it on its head so that it's Sean who has a crush on Lucy. Lucy is, known for being short. Maybe she is a straight A student, but she also happens to be a star point guard on the school basketball team. Why not have her front and center? And it's through maybe Sean's POV, this whole story, or it could still be through Lucy's and like her struggle of juggling these multiple identities of being like star athlete, but her parents don't see value in that as much as her, grades or something. I don't know. That's one way to start to workshop this. Perhaps.
I got very excited about that. Because when you said it was Sean's perspective, I'm like, okay, so maybe the show is about Lucy, but in this specific episode, we're gonna further Sean's arc because he actually has a want need. There's something so he's not on the team. Maybe he's trying to go into some business school because he too owns a restaurant, a family restaurant, and he's trying to be the manager, and his arch nemesis is also the co-manager or something like that. And this is his arc in this episode, and this is how Lucy is the B plot and his arc is the A plot or something like that that's going on. So here's an episode where you've centered a character. You get to see them progress, you get to get invested in them. Maybe that's going to be your character for the season, and Lucy is a cool person as well, but that's where I went with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zainab.
I secretly wanted Lucy not to be mega crushing on Sean, but maybe mega crushing on Rebecca, and secretly wanting to go getting distracted at the piano recital. Even she'll do the piano recital, but she's like, oh, this is my chance. And that kind of sway into Rebecca. I want to learn more about Rebecca. Like, why is she arch nemesis really? Or maybe she's like, she is the object of all desire, right? So that was interesting to me. But yeah, I really like how we're shifting away from this whole, oh, she leaves everything to do it for this guy, or like she drops everything just for this guy, and this pandering to the male kind of way of. So yeah, I really appreciate that shift. I want to see lots more of it. But yes, this is Rebecca gal. I got to hear more about this Rebecca gal.
Yeah. Cool.
See, with this new format, we have an opportunity to have a whole series of Rebecca episodes and have her whole arc over the season. How come she got this job when she wasn't qualified? What's that story? How does she feel about that? Is she aware, or is she leaning into it?
Yeah. Great. After coming up with these ideas, it reminded me of like the complete opposite of this, a real world example in terms of what I personally think they did really well in terms of unexpected character description and plot lines and things like that. It was a Netflix film called The Half of It. And in that film, there's, the main protagonist is a second generation Asian American girl. Her father is widowed. They don't own a restaurant, but instead he's the station master of this tiny little town in the Pacific Northwest. And to Zainab's point, she crushes on this other girl at school. And, that's kind of like the super simplified version of that. But if you want to see a project where they handled this very well and kind of did very unexpected character development that does not stereotype, I would highly recommend that as an example. So yeah, just want to say that. Oh, I did realize we didn't talk about something in terms of like animation. What often happens is that our characters aren't human. So in that case, what do you do then? Or is this even an issue if your characters are non-human? Quite often, and especially like preschool shows, they're anthropomorphized animals, or they're creatures from another world, that sort of thing. Should this still be considered in those scenarios? What are anyone's thoughts on that?
We're going to segue to that. I think it'd be interesting, in terms of this one, just whether it's in animation or in live action, for example, how Sean Kuminga was cast, like what does he look like? What are the conditions that Sean is working under? Are we going for a mixed looking Sean? Is he a dark-skinned Sean? Does he have Afrocentric features? Does he have very chiseled features? Does he have a makeup artist on set who is going to be able to do his makeup at all? Is he gonna have to do that at home? We heard a story recently about an actor who was losing his hairline because he did not have the appropriate, even in live action, makeup artists to work with them. In the report, it came out about how hard it is for illustrators, not hard, but just what a challenge it seems to have been for a lot of illustrators to draw characters with Black kinky hair, and how it's often like just made straight. I know in creating an illustrated character recently how long it took. It was really hard. It should not have taken that long. But just thinking about that, like how are you going to even authentically represent that? And I don't know if Kira wants to talk about this, about in giving a character a specific name, and what does that visually look like on camera, even if it's animated, and just even to add a hint of it to show it's more than just a name and a checkbox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is where we get into the topic or the term of coding. In a scenario where you are creating characters that are not human, there's so many ways that you could still instill cultural features or like racial features into a non-human character, whether it's intentional or not. It could be, like Kai said, things like hair, things like dress, style, fashion, manner of speech. We've been speaking about accents and things like that. It's all the sort of like intangible cultural things as well, like even the food they eat, or like what's in their bedroom, like on their wall, or like the type of home they live in, the type of furniture. Do they sleep on the floor? Do they sleep on the bed? Do they sit on the floor? Do they take their shoes off or not at home? That sort of thing, the little tiny cues. Those we could all kind of, under the umbrella term, call it like coding, things that kind of cue you, to hint you or remind you, whether it's intentional or not, that, oh, perhaps this person embodies these cultures and things like that. And one example that I could speak from my personal experience when I was working at a studios, for one particular show, there were these characters that were not human. They're kind of humanoid, but the original design from the creator, they were dark skinned and they had curly hair, and their mouth design was a very certain style, and they happened to live underground underneath a castle where a blonde-haired princess lived. And the lead designer on our team came to me one day, and I was the producer on the show, and he said, you know what, I kind of have an issue with this. Can we have a talk? And then he explained to me, he's like, this all kind of adds up to being like an African-American character. And that's like very touchy when they live underground, literally, under this castle. And I said, you know what, now that you put it that way, I can't unsee that. So we had, discussions with the creators and the broadcasters, and everyone said, you know what, thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, that is something that we were all blind to. And it's, it for me is a real good lesson as to how important it is to make sure that your staff, your team of designers, whoever it is on set, etc., have those different lived experiences. Because like if it was all someone else's responsibility, my responsibility, it would have gone under the radar, and then it would have ended up on the screen, and that would have been hurtful for a lot of people. So I'm glad that happened, but that's just a real world example that I wanted to share. So that's kind of all that to say. This is kind of what we mean by what we say coding, and when you're creating, designing non-humanoid characters, these are all kind of things to consider. So yeah, does anyone have any feedback or thoughts on any of that?
Well, I just wanted to tie all of that back to one of the directives, which is because we have heard that from children's creators that producers, broadcasters have said non-humanoid characters are a way to avoid representation. So one of our key directives, one of them is that's not true. And please review your non-humanoid characters, as Jiro just described, to make sure that you haven't, without thinking about it, coded them in a certain way.
Yeah, and you likely won't know until you start showing it and getting feedback from a multitude of people, from a multitude of lived experiences and different how they identify. Because you could comb through, it's like, writing in a, if I was, writing my own project in my own silo, like I have blinders on, it's like you need people to review stuff and get feedback. So yeah, it's absolutely critical part of the process.
I think another thing that jumped into my mind was the fact that, you had created a space where, not just the fact you had the team there, but you had created an environment where people felt open and comfortable speaking and sharing these opinions. You also had someone in a position of power who is open and receptive to that. And it just sort of speaks to persons who are in key positions, and that it's very hard to speak up when you're the only person in the room. And, just having multiple people on your team in multiple positions, in key positions, kind of helps to create the environment where you can catch these things before it goes out there. Because if it's just your PAs and the COVID protocols person, so you're probably not going to catch it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I was just gonna say, and also good job like taking their feedback and actually incorporating it, because I'm sure we've all been people that have given feedback and then they're I've said like, oh, this is actually really offensive. They're like, oh, is it? No, we didn't mean it to be, and then nothing has changed. So that's good that you took that and actually made a difference.
This one, I don't know, Kelly, if anyone who's been in this position, if they want to speak to it, or if they just how you've coped with this, where maybe you are in a position where you can do something about it, but at the end of the day, you're not the one who's paying the bills, you're not the broadcaster, you're not the funder, and you're having to go up against the people who are paying everybody's check and giving you the platform for you to work, and trying to stay positioned, or like how you've navigated that successfully, if anyone wants to speak about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speak up if you're not in that position and you're just kind of like not a non like key creative, which I'm usually like just a production person, or I was at the time. So, or you don't want to be seen as like, the person that's always making the statements, because then they're like, oh, Georgina's speaking up again, so it's a fine line. I think it's a fine line, but yeah, it's just like what you said, like if you surround yourself with key creatives and higher ups, like that actually listen, or are people, of color and stuff who will listen, and then you can actually make a difference at that point. I think it's harder when you're just one of the people, like the COVID PA or something. Yeah, so it just comes down to hire the people in the right positions.
It makes me think of like the entire pipeline so in terms of the directives, even just beyond the content creators, to the other sides of, and all the parties in the industry that make this up and allow this to happen.
Yeah, and that way you're not relying on people who are hired specifically to do that, because that's a lot of pressure and responsibility too. Like, hey, you're the one who's supposed to spot all this, so if someone has an issue, that's on you later on. It shouldn't have to be that way. It's because for any type of content, it takes a village to create all this stuff. So the more different types of sets of eyes and ears you have on everything, then it'll happen more naturally. I can't say, no one can guarantee it'll always be spotted and that sort of thing, but yeah, that's the hope.
Just to clarify, in case anyone doesn't know, I know I've seen a lot more like EDI producers or EDI associate or EDI officers on productions, and to Jira's point, I don't know if this is what you were talking about, like people, it's their responsibility to like gatekeep and check off everything to make sure, but as you said, it's like on one person to like do everything and be everywhere and see everything that's happening on set, in makeup, in the scripts, in every aspect of the production. I don't know, business affairs, who's getting the fair, like, I mean, that's a lot on one person. So you said it's a whole system and ecosystem and pipelines. If the people aren't there, then how do you train them and get them into positions so they can be there?
Mhm.
Do we want to go to the next scenario?
Sure.
that sounds
Could
good.
you bring up the sample scenario 2? Okay. Hello. Gonna assume everybody is back and ready to hear about this amazing, exciting new 3D animated project for 3 to 6-year-olds with some social skills learning built into each 11-minute episode. So let me introduce you to At Amazing Academy. The most amazing kids from across the galaxy are sent to learn and explore in a colorful town of Amazeville, where positive attitude and friendship help everyone be their best selves. Oh my goodness, it's just cuddly goodness. Can you just imagine the poster? A group of interspecies friends from across the galaxy. It's just great. And it's super cute tingles. You just want every kid, they just want to bring these amazing new friends into their home. Well, let me tell you more about this amazing series about interspecies friends. Each episode will follow the ups and downs of 7-year-old Benny Budwell, the new kid in town who's getting used to the fact that he's the only human on the block, as well as recently becoming a big brother. Benny's determined to prove he's amazing at home and at school. Too bad he gets a little overboard sometimes. One constant in Benny's life is his orange tabby, Sir Fluffington, roll that R, who's always has an outfit perfect for any occasion. Benny's family, his tabby, and his new friends help him realize that he just has to be himself to be amazing. Okay, so this is our new preschool bridge series. Now, from what's been described, what would you say the series is about? What are your big takeaways? Anyone, what do you remember? Would you say it's a show about, do you get a sense it's a show about a lot of different characters and a group of friends who are actively doing a lot of things? Does it give you that sense? Or on one hand, we've spent a lot of time talking about Benny. Does it feel like it's more Benny's world, or is it the school academy world? Which one do you think, either way, and explain why you think so? Say now.
I feel like it started out with the Amazing Academy and then Benny came in. So it's like I would love to know about the Amazing Academy, and because he's new to it, are we introducing that world first or are we introducing Benny first? And I think the POV for me was like, what? Because I would love to know about the other amazing kids. And Benny's great. Love Benny. Like, no offense to Benny, but it would be nice to see the other set of characters to kind of offset his, like, kind of give him those challenges and those exciting kind of that world, right? Fill out that world a bit.
Yeah, one of the things that we had found was in terms of, you know, a lead character, or even when it said things are set up as an ensemble, very often you'll hear, well, there's usually one character who you need to focus on and it's your entry point for everything else. So you do have our Benny character, and we wondered, well, how could we make it so that even if it is from Benny's perspective that we're experiencing this world, how could we make this character diverse? or bring a new perspective to it. Because one of the things that's been brought up here is the fact that how many human characters do we have? Did anybody pick up on that?
Yep. Sam got it right. It's just the one.
Well, and the
Yeah.
brother. And the brother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Probably
here's
has parents.
exactly. So this is one of the examples we were looking at where you will talk about having a diverse cast, but you know, the main character who you're spending time with is from a not particularly diverse family. So yes, you can have Benny, people who you see, whose lives you get into, you get to know the little nitty gritty about is Benny, his family, his cat, his sibling, his parents, and then yes, you go to Amazing Academy. So if you could go to the next slide, let's go find out about those amazing kids at Amazing Academy now. Look at our descriptions about these other amazing kids in the academy. All right, let's go through them. We have Leah Pandaloo. It's an amazing piano player and figure skater who helps Benny see how it takes hard work to be amazing. You also have Kwame Coco Gorillabana, is an amazing para basketball player who was adopted and shows Benny that a sense of humor makes everything amazing. We also have Mahar Monkey-Lala, is an amazing inventor who's always joined by his small family of 17. Mahar shows Benny that community helps make us amazing. And then finally, we have Leonora Lionheart. She brings out the amazing in everything, in everyone with her songs and her just right sayings. She shows Benny being our naturally amazing selves is all we need to belong. So from this, do you feel like we've gotten equal amount of like sort of backstory and world created for all of our characters? In terms of, I mean, think about this in terms of in terms of the stories, based on how this is set up, how can you, we've been given an episode description here, but can you imagine in the episodes, does it sound like, how much time does it seem like we're spending on Benny's story and Benny's journey versus the other characters and their journey, or what they might be learning in terms of these social emotional learns that we've promised? Do you see opportunities for this with all the characters?
It sounds like it's just going to be like Benny meets one of the children or one of these students and his one-on-one experience with them in each episode, but they're just like a kind of a one-off character unless they become reoccurring. I don't know. So I don't who knows? Don't know.
And if they are reoccurring, I mean, have you seen situations where you maybe see a character again, but you find out new information about them? Or is it that they kind of come back with the same thing? They're going to like, I am the piano player, so today I'm going to talk about my piano lesson. And today I'm going to have a new recital song. And every episode is kind of the singular note that the character is hitting. Versus giving you, as you said, there's another opportunity. Yes, if it's a recurring character, maybe you learn something else about the character each time and you start fleshing out these character descriptions so you can give them a whole full world and whole stories. And even in terms of the learns, as you said, like you're seeing it through Benny's perspective, but is Benny giving us a new perspective or a diverse perspective, especially if it's coming from that example? I mean, what do you think in terms of how we could make it, even if it's coming from one character, how we could make this a little bit more inclusive or have broader representation?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna burst. I can't handle all these characters of color supporting Benny on his journey. Why are we supporting only Benny on his journey? Like, they need their own journeys and they need Benny to get in on their stuff and learn about them a little bit. They're always supporting him to be amazing and his hard work. And I can't stand, we've reshift. We can shift this. Because like you said, like I do want to learn a lot more about these characters. They look like very like they're a couple dimensions, but we need to go even further, and they are going to just be fabulous characters that different people identify with, potentially. The names, and the animal choices to the names, I think could be adjusted as well. They're extremely stereotypical as well. But yeah, that part, the always supporting the white character, or that character that's very mainstream, is a very common trope, I think. And to be able to break out of that would make this story amazing for our preschoolers.
I mean, even for preschool, I'm going to speak about an experience I had last night. I was watching a movie, I'm not going to name it, and it was one I was very excited about. And the poster, same thing, that's where the idea came from. Very diverse looking poster, you know, in terms of little descriptions, very diverse characters, but you did have the central, you know, very cis-normative white middle-class family, and that's the one whose home you saw, that's whose kitchen you were in, that's whose, you know, extended relatives you saw. And at the end of the day, when the main action happened, all the other characters kind of fell away, and they were just there to support the main character and that plot that happened in that world. And I think about it in a lot of the shows that you see, it happens a lot. Like, you don't always realize that everybody else is just there supporting that main character. And you think about the learns in the episodes. One really good example I had an experience of a show that I worked on was where there was, like, yes, many diverse characters, but in the writer's room, a conscious effort was, for each season, we're going to have X number of episodes where it's, you know, character A's learn, character B's learn, character C's learn. So that means in this episode, that character is centered. It's all about them. Their arc is progressing, and you're tracking that. And maybe you have your multiple summits, but you're thinking, okay, we just did everything for character A, so we're not having any more stories about character A. We're done. We need to go to all the other characters, and that way you can consciously be aware that you are centering them versus, you know, again, I've worked in another show where every episode it's one character's learn, and it everybody else just becomes these at the set dressing for that person's journey. Can you think of any shows or examples where there is an ensemble cast, or there are secondary characters and they're used in a really interesting way, where they're really fleshed out, and just strategies that are done to really utilize that secondary cast?
One example that's not a kids show that I think of is Community, which had a really, I think, had a fantastic ensemble, and it eventually sort of became a joke to everyone else at the community college that these 6 or 7 characters thought of themselves as the center of the world, because they were the center of our world. But I love how it was almost it was almost like they were taking cues from The Simpsons or something, to turn all these kind of walk-on, one-off characters into an existing community, which they used for comedy, which I thought was really great. Still, some characters sidelined, though, if you thinking about it. The Yvette Nicole Brown character very rarely got central story billing, now that I think about it. So it's been a while since I've watched that one.
And it makes me think of the idea of even content tracking, and it's something that I know, I said, I gave an example in one particular writer's room, but I know it's in another series where the producers did do content tracking because they wanted to ensure that they were having representation, and it helped them to acknowledge there were times where this is the extreme side. They're like, oh my goodness, we've not had anyone of European descent featured in the show. We've completely ignored this, or any male character. We need to bring this in a little bit more, just so that to say, you know, the statistics. But again, if you're trying to have like this broad representation, you have all these characters, you can be a little bit mathematical at times about, you know, how you're spreading it out when you have, you know, 52 episodes to go. Like, you can start thinking about that on scale. And I'm not sure like anybody else has any strategies that you've used in any of your projects to sort of see how you can consciously distribute, whether it's the crew or the storylines.
Yeah,
or the casting.
I think it's, yeah, it starts in the writer's room, like you were saying, like that's when you start to really, you should start having those checks and balances, like how many of person A's stories are we telling versus person B? Because like to your point about like it could get mathematical when you're doing you know, your brand extensions and things like that. You're like, all right, so what are we gonna really, you know, focus on in terms of like licensing and merch and all those other extensions? Well, who's our most popular characters? And then, you know, I think naturally the most popular characters are going to be the ones you see on the screen the most and whose adventures you're following the most. And if most of the stories are written with them central being the ones learning lessons, then that's the way it's going to skew. So it all starts, the design of that starts consciously in the writer's room, very upfront. So yeah,
You know, it made me, you know, it made me think of, like, for example, if you know that a specific character, maybe it wasn't intentionally a character you thought that was going to be popular, but you can see from maybe your digital content or some other avenues where you're able to tap into your audience, and you can see that a character is resonating, or there's a specific community that you maybe want to tap into more, then that's an opportunity within, as you said, in your future writers' rooms to write more of that character, to give them more space to flesh it out, to build a new audience that maybe didn't exist by allowing them some of a spotlight. If you see that there's, you know, that interest, tapping in. I think about in some instances with some shows where you test some of the characters, you put them out in a smaller dose and see which ones the audience is resonating with, especially if you have an intention of, you say, for example, you want to put out more female characters and you already know in the space of, I want more female characters. So you're already going the space of diversity and saying, okay, here's a range of them, and all of them, you'd be happy to go with any one of them, but let's see which one's resonating with the audience. So you're not, you know what I mean? That's one way that I know is, like, as kids content creators, people have successfully put out diverse characters and made sure it was something that was resonating with the audience at the same time. So you get both things happening.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's another one talking about even just centering. It was for nonfiction. It was a show called It's My Party on TVO Kids. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Yay. And just in the sense of you're learning about a new experience, but it's not always from the host's perspective. It's, you have, you know, your guest child, and then you have another guest child, and they're introducing you to a new world and a new experience, again, from a new person's experience. And so again, and it's centering the kids, just as another really great example of, not necessarily second, you do have your host, and the whole main host is there, but it's not all about the main host, and it is a diverse host as well. But just again, it's a lot of ways of bringing in, I guess, as that secondary characters and giving them an opportunity to be centered. I've seen other examples where, yeah, you have diverse characters, but they never get to speak. You never really get to see it through their perspective. Maybe they ask a question or something, but they never really get centered in that episode. And I think, like, you know, in that show I mentioned, It's My Party is a good example of bringing in guest characters and really allowing them to take center stage.
I think that ties into the directive about checkbox diversity, which is because the broadcasters are all asking for on-screen diversity, so that it's easy for creators to just throw all these different characters in without going below to creating them authentically. So just wanted to tie that back to a directive.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Of course.
I think that it ties into definitely the checkbox diversity and intention. I work in development, which usually there's fewer writers. There might be one writer. So my one thing, I don't expect a definitive answer. I know that there's a lot of ways of going about these things, but I just wonder. To create an authentic, diverse ensemble, it's really hard when you only have one voice. So, do you think that it's okay to kind of, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself here, do you think it's okay to kind of say the intentionality is, like Jiro said, start in the writer's room, to once it goes from being, because it's animation too, once it goes from being one or two people to being a big group of people. Is that an acceptable kind of is that enough, I guess, is my question. Is it enough to say I'm creating a diverse cast of diverse characters? And I know diversity is a word that is used by people like me to blanket as a blanket statement, but I mean, I'm just very curious because it feels like there's a lot of mistakes that can be made accidentally. So I'd love to know a bit more about kind of how you would like to see that navigated, you know, with best intentions, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think the writer's room is the place to start it. But that's like only one of the stages. And, you know, as we said earlier, with every step of production, try to instill that as much as possible throughout, whether it's through your cast, any members of your crew. And we've mentioned consultants before. Consultants are a great way of checks and balances, not just at writing stage, but, you know, design and further on. There are sort of, I don't want to call them traps, but like certain things to be aware of when bringing in consultants. Maybe we could start talking about that at this point as well. But you know, that's definitely, you know, a way of ensuring that you have those additional perspectives on your project. But yeah, it's starting at the writer's room, and beyond. That's just part of the whole process. But yeah, that'd be great to start at the writer's room.
I think to Phil's point, and to piggyback on what Jira said, in terms of like, especially at the development stage where you don't even have a full writer's room and it might be just yourself and one or two, I think some of the things that I've seen done where possible is, even if just from it's a singular writer, is doing interviews. If it's not your own lived experience where you're just looking at your family or the things around you. I mean, even if it is your family, I recently heard a writer saying they interviewed their family. Just be like, I need your perspective. I really want to get to the nitty gritty. I'm writing you as a character. You are not me. But even if it's not that, just going out and interviewing people who are a little bit closer to it. Maybe if I'm using this as my own personal example where the lead character is pretty much me or a version close to me. So I know that perspective, but it's a lot of others, but the other characters really, but even the things that aren't and are going deeper and the experiences that aren't necessarily my personal ones, just going deeper, interviewing people, as many people as you can. If you've gotten a writer's fee to pay for that, use some of that time to do the research, to find out the elements that you don't know. And I mean, that's one example of one where it's maybe something that's fairly close to home, but I've seen in other examples, again, in the development side, where you might say that this is a story that's maybe the original writer went very close to it, but maybe you want to bring in a story editor or someone else who is much closer to it and kind of can, you know, for example, it might be a story about a female experience or a non-binary experience, but maybe you are cisgender and you have nothing to do with that. Are you the one to be the lead show running writer, creator to shape this world? If this is not anything near to your lived experience, maybe that's just not it. And that's not the way the project's going to be packaged together. If you have that authority, or you can bring that into the room, or maybe depending on who the powers that be, they may say this is a condition of an option or any sort of development. And again, yes, consultants are super important. I've heard of examples where the writers were not necessarily up to the stage of being a writer in the room, but they didn't want them to just be kind of in and out every now and then to give a checks and balances, speak on behalf of everybody. So they actually had them sit in on the writer's room and just be constant resources for information, and to just constantly, as he said, be there, say, no, I would never say, or I would say this. And again, because they knew that they were so far away from it, they had the intention, but they were so far away from the story that they just didn't think they could, the time they were spending in the writer's room would be of use. This is actually a show, I read it in an article, the show in development right now, and they said that's how they were approaching it, because they were just so far away from it. So I think there's lots of creative ways that you can go about trying to do that if it's not your own experience.
Yeah, one thing that we say in the directives is to do the work. And for every project, that's going to be different. If it's from your own lived experience or your family's experience, your level of research and work is going to be different than if it's a community that you have no interactions with. And some of that work is going to be hiring people. Some of it may just be you're doing research, you're going, online and watching videos of people and how they move so that you get an idea of how people from a different community walk and talk and move. So we don't set sort of do this, don't do this. You have to think about what your particular project is, your relationship to it. As Kai said, are you the right person to do it? And if you are, what do you have to do to show that you've done the work? And one thing that one last thing, we've heard about people not of the community creating content, and then the producer saying, don't worry, we'll get a consultant to fix it at the end. Don't do that.
Another thing I just thought of, and is the idea again about if you're the one to tell a story, not to, and I mean, and there's a lot of gray area in this, I think, but you do find that especially depending on the story, if possible, especially if it has some basis in any reality other than your own personal, and you think about this from the legality of life rights, all that business, is just getting consent. If you can go to, I heard a story about, it wasn't kids content, but it was a person from a specific community wanted to tell a story about another community that they were loosely related to. They didn't get permission. Everyone was upset. They're like, you didn't get permission. You didn't check in with us if it was okay. This is how we wanted the story to be told, if we wanted to participate. So I think, as much as possible, again, unless it's coming from, I'm thinking of Bluey as when I say everyone doing it from your house, because that's how apparently the writer of Bluey does it. It's his kids. He just writes about his kids in his house. He's like, that's how I do it. He's a singular writer. He's like, I don't really, claims he doesn't need to look beyond, it's his family. But if you can get permission, if you can get consent, if you can get buy-in, if you can get that community support, it's not just about just the consent, but the participation. If you are spotlighting a community, why would you not want them involved and giving you your full blessing behind the project that you're doing, if you are the right one to tell it?
Yeah, I've recently been writing on a history-based preschool show where the network and the producers have been making a really, really concerted effort to bring in consultants early on that are either, ideally from that background and expertise about these historical figures. To the point where I wrote an episode about Hawaiian royalty, and the consultant is an academic who is actually from that bloodline of that royalty. So, and it took a long time to find this person. And like I pitched the story and it took months. I'm like, is this going to happen or not? And they kept saying to me, we want to find the right person. And then the moment they did, they told me, and I made so many missteps in writing the scripts, and I got notes back like, please don't do this. That's pretty token. This is actually is offensive because it references this historical thing. I'm like, ooh, I didn't realize there's so many landmines that I'm stepping on. But thank goodness they found this person, because, and to Kelly Lynn's point with the directive, it's like, it takes that legwork of finding the right person to pair with the project to ensure that, yeah, all these things are being told respectfully. And through that, person, we did get the permission to tell this particular story. That was a huge learning experience for me. If it wasn't for that, it's like, I wouldn't be proud to have my name on that script, because it's like, I just wrote something really bad. But it was thanks to that person's input that we were able to put that episode together.
I have a thought of here. You said it starts in the writer's room. I'm thinking it also starts the budget, because you need the money in the budget to pay for that person, and also in the scheduling to give time for that to happen. Because if you didn't budget or schedule for that, that's just never going to happen. It's like, oh, well, sorry, you don't have the budget for that. I didn't. So you have to be intentional about that, I think, from the get-go, that you want to go through that process. And it's part of the workflow. I think, I mean, and I say this because I've been in situations where these type of things are built into the workflow. It's just how it's done. It's one of the checks along the way that you do. And it's not a, oh my goodness, we don't know what to do. This is so strange. Who would we possibly go to in the world kind of thing? And if you're in the habit and it's part of the protocols of it, and that awareness of when you're going outside of your own experience, or when you might want to check in, or when it's going into something especially historical, or you are doing a kid show and you say you're giving hard facts or you're teaching, then to be sure that you've checked.
I love that it starts with the budget. I wrote that down and underlined.
Yeah, budget and schedule. My
Yes,
gosh, 'cause,
budget
like,
and schedule.
and I'm feeling it now. Like I used to be responsible for budget and schedule, but now I'm the one, delivering, meeting deadlines as a writer. But often, like, I'll send stuff and it'll be literally like months sometimes before it comes back, because they're like, oh, we couldn't find the right person to review it. And to do it properly, that's what you have to be prepared to do. Because if it's not just one blanket consultant it depends on the show, but this particular show is like, we travel around the world, so we're going to different places and different points in history. So yeah, it's like super, super important, because if it's not scheduled or budgeted, that's gonna be the first thing to go. And it's just like, all right, well, we need to keep feeding the production pipeline, write some stories, and then it just falls to the wayside.
I think that's something that we're being seen is going to be doing, talking to broadcasters and funders, because in the same way that focus testing with kids has now become standard and it's part of the budget, and it didn't used to be until people realized, no, we actually have to check in with real kids. We want to have this sort of checking in with consultants throughout, and researchers, or whatever that project needs, to become standard and an acceptable part of budgets and schedules.
Okay, I'm looking at the schedule. All right, maybe we should jump ahead to the next slide, which is, my goodness, this one's an exciting one if you like toys, and hopefully you do, because we are in the kids industry. So after the wonderful success, remember, Maze Academy. So after the wonderful success of the season 1 brand extensions, these included Benny's Amazing Playhouse playset, the I Don't Like Change picture book about Benny's first day of school, the Amazing Academy app, and Sir Fluffington collectibles with swappable outfits. Huge success. They're amazing. Get them all. We'd like to tell you more about season 2. Okay, first off, in North America, there will be a live tour featuring hit songs from the show, plus 3 new songs, including one from Sir Fluffington and the Kit Kats, 20 new Sir Fluffington mini plush collectibles, 5 new picture books, including Benny's Amazing Birthday and Benny's Amazing Christmas, just for the holidays, and Amazing Academy's NFT pack featuring all your amazing pals. You'll get them all from the Amazing Academy. Plus, you'll have exclusive access to the Fluffy Fishing Game. Now, I'm not excited about this. Can't you see that we have utilized our entire diverse cast in all of our play offerings? Do you think so?
I smell some sarcasm in your voice.
Can anyone see any sort of missed opportunities here, and what some very subtle coding that might be happening in terms of the toys and the licensing and merchandising we've chosen to put out for this brand?
I just want to say you had the perfect selling voice, so that's what you're doing, right? Like, I was like, I want to buy
convincing.
this.
It's like, this sounds great. Yeah.
I wanted to buy the Fluffington mini plush collectibles. After your
I
radio
was thinking of
ad.
those cats. The cats versus pickles. I wanted them all.
I needed them.
But it's those amazing collectible things. That's a lot of the reason why in Canada there's so much preschool content, because the licensing and the merchandising makes up a huge part of it. It's not just the show, it's everything else that comes with it. So again, in thinking not just about your show, but what are the extensions and what are you perpetuating in those extensions? So the same thing, who do you see being centered in these brand extensions for the show?
Well, it's all about Benny, right? All about Benny and the cat.
Yeah, who knew the cat was so important, eh?
But I mean, the friends could be, in the playhouse.
I know. Where are these
I don't know.
friends? And why are we celebrating Christmas? Come on. Come on. Get it together, right? Like,
But you know what, if we are choosing, and I'm glad that you know that if we are choosing to celebrate Christmas, are there other holidays that we could also be
Right.
celebrating?
Let's talk about that.
And I mean, yeah, that is a really big one of like, let's see what some of the books could be, you know. We have our characters from different cultures. This is a great way to spotlight that and center those stories. But you know, thinking about on your teams when you're looking for these extensions, are these ideas that you have in your head, are the people who you're speaking to, who are the toy companies or the book companies or the publishers, are these the ideas that they're coming to you with? How are you putting this out there? Who are even the toy companies or the publishers or the people who are doing the extensions that you could be working with? Is it a company that is also diverse? So say the earrings I got, apparently they're from Saskatchewan, from an Indigenous jeweler. I felt really strongly, but I didn't want it to be very far. I wanted to make sure it was going back in the community. So even if you are doing something about, say, let's say it's Diwali, is the people who are the company who's producing it, is it an Indian company? Like, I just thinking about that entire pipeline and how the choices that you're making in terms of extending your brand tie into that. And it also goes again to how you can market your project, to say that you have thought about that in your entire pipeline and that there are markets that you are now penetrating. I think about this with Oznoz from Big Bad Boo as their streaming platform that has a lot of really popular shows, but in other languages other than English. And so opening up to a whole new market, not market, but tapping into a market that is underserved by what is our mainstream, and thinking about that, how we can think outside of the box. And sometimes that means thinking of other ways to get directly to the customer. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas of, or even personal experiences of ways in terms of licensing and merchandising that can be really creative with the IP that allows for, you know, authentic representation that you can really be proud of. Or ways that you've tapped into diverse, I'm using the word term diverse, but diverse, but yeah, a broader audience beyond the people in, you know, in what people assume is middle Canada.
I think in addition to the app, and then I believe there was the NFT idea that unfortunately right now NFTs are not as accessible to as inclusive as they could be to larger communities. I work with a nonprofit that's trying to bring more accessibility through NFTs in that space for creators. But I think when it comes to technology, in addition to those opportunities that you're creating, those touch points that you're creating, we need to also match that with community outreach, right? And that we talk, I think you brought that up about consent in the community and reaching out to the community and letting them know that, you know, we're creating this. What ways can we work together to kind of bring the story to out and bring it to life, right? So I think that it needs to be matched with more accessible ways to tell the story and reach out to the communities that matter, that are represented in this story. Yeah, so those are kind of things that I think about too. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think, like, if you don't find those communities or you know, find those needs that people, even if you're not aware that people are searching for certain types of content, people still go out there and seek it themselves. And I think that was one of the things, right, Kelly Lynn, that we found from the research, is that people will, like, parents are doing that in terms of like finding what they see as, like, you know, content that reflects their reality, that sort of thing, and they'll find it.
And I think if you understand and respect the, like, I wouldn't say understand, but like you see, this is going back to being seen, that you see that these communities exist, and I come back to the idea of assimilation and an assumed assimilation, everybody's the same, and the way that you reach one particular audience. Like I'm going to put it in a Facebook group, and so everybody must be there. Not everybody's on Facebook, you know. If we put it out in English, everybody just should know. Well, maybe not everybody speaks English. Maybe the person who cares for the child doesn't speak English. If you put it in that way, you're not going to get it. So thinking about different ways to reach your audience and create touch points. And if you know something about your audience, like for example, let's say they're Persian, and they often will have their kids doing Persian lessons, then if you release your book in Persian and one of your characters happens to be Iranian, and you center that, then you know you're reaching out, you're tapping into that huge community. You are, even from a business standpoint, market is there. This is a need that they have. You have this character. It's not just a token character, but this is a way to expand their world and create a further touch point. Or just even as you said with the NFTs, or you're building an app, is your app can only be used on a Nintendo Switch or the most expensive console? Is it something that can be used on a school computer? Is it something that is accessible? And therefore, when you put it out, like it's sort of, again, knowing your audience, where they are, what is meaningful to them, and sort of if you are including the character and you are doing these extensions, doing it in a meaningful way. And again, also respecting that, yeah, if you just only care about money, respecting the fact that they do have economic power, they are putting their money and time into something. And if you're not serving that need, it's going somewhere else.
Yeah, we heard a lot from parents who aren't finding the content that they want on traditional broadcast channels, so they're going to YouTube. And it's not just, you know, we've heard some people think, oh, well, it's because they want to get content from their home country. No, there aren't the same barriers to entry. So you get North American creators from all these different backgrounds who are creating content. And sometimes it's scripted, sometimes it's unboxing videos, but that's what the kids want to see, somebody that looks like them, even if it's just an unboxing video. And this is one thing that really asked creators to think about, the missed opportunities, because if they're looking for content, the kids and the families are looking for content, we should be providing it to them so that they don't have to go to YouTube to find it.
And I think, you know, it's the idea of the pipeline. There's an example of a series that I know of. And it started off as a comic book, and you know, there's many different ways of testing idea and finding your audience and your market. Started off as a comic book, self-published comic book, did a lot of crowdfunding campaigns and, you know, direct to consumer purchases, and also again, self-publishing, got a little bit bigger, did like a kind of animatic, got a little bit bigger, did a little animation. And, you know, just by finding new avenues, and I guess that's part of it. Sometimes it's finding new avenues to consumers and partnerships that help to create those direct avenues. I think about, just the entire pipeline from the distribution, all of that, of like how, if the mainstream isn't necessarily able to tap into that audience, is there another partnership that you can make that can allow you to tap into a market that can help to justify the budget for your production? Because maybe they're not accessible through that particular mainstream, but you know that the audience will go to other easy to access platforms. And so can you be creative about, I think that's the producer side, not necessarily the writer side, but it's the producer side about how do you creatively finance this? How do you creatively get to that audience that exists and are craving for this? Because they're not getting enough. So how do you get to them? How do you give them what they want if the gatekeepers maybe aren't there just yet? If anybody has any grand ideas, come on, we're waiting. This is the whole point of all this.
Maybe we should go to that last slide of quotes from the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's one thing I wanted to say as you go into that last slide was, we didn't touch on it too much, and it's going to be one of the sessions later on this week. One about, we did mention things about gender expression, but also about disability. And I think it comes up in your slides about, you know, the distribution, even it's 22% in our general population. And even in terms of what we do see, I think it's 2.2% have mobility issues. And very often we're going to show disability, kid in a wheelchair. There you go. Done. Sweet. there's such a huge range even in that 2.2%, but in terms of everything else that exists, it is a very, very huge range of what disability can look like, sound like, feel like. And my one example of, there's many, but one that I recently saw that I really appreciated was a show called Dead End, where there's a character with anxiety, and there's a regular plot, but in terms of episode, you really got to see firsthand what that person's like anxiety was like. And I thought that was just really amazing because it isn't an invisible thing. It could have been turned into a punchline or a joke or a flaw of the character, but instead it was very much humanized, and I thought done in a really sensitive way. And just thought I would put that out there in terms of how we can, in the books or in the extensions or within the series itself, we can show different sides of characters.
So just wanted to talk a little bit about these quotes, because again, it's bringing it back to the kids and the parents. A 7-year-old who wants to see more characters who are gender fluid, and because they see kids like their classmates, but they don't ever see themselves. And then the parent who is, a solo genderqueer parent, and it's like, but their kid isn't going to sit down and watch content specifically related to that because he wants to be like all his friends. So that content has to get into mainstream content like Paw Patrol. And then I think we talked about this, about animated shows that can't seem to figure out how to draw natural black hair. And that particular person had no awareness of ever having seen an animated character with natural black hair. There are huge opportunities in each one of these quotes for doing better and providing kids with content and parents with content that they're going to be happy with their kids seeing. So I think that's pretty much it for this portion. If anybody has any questions, we can take that slide down. We've got a few minutes.
I just want to acknowledge this is really, really hard. It's really hard work to make all this happen. Because I'm just thinking about the thing about like artists who don't know how to draw the black hair, or, like writers who, we want to bring in writers from different communities, but like the reality is a lot of, because of, up until now, we haven't been welcoming them, or we haven't been providing the opportunities. So the reality is there's going to be this long ramp up period of finding people who have that potential and then training them up. And that takes time, and it takes a lot of extra effort on the part of producers and creators, or people who are further along and have the resources and are in those positions of power. I've been on projects, or one recent project where they had a fellowship, a writing fellowship, where they had people apply to become trained as writers. And it's a really great idea. But I recently spoke to the story editor and how that went, and they said it's really great. It's just a lot of hard work, because these are writers who've never written ever on any produced content, and they're being expected to deliver scripts that are eventually going to be broadcast. So it takes extra effort on part of everyone to train them up. So yeah, if we're going to do this, like, we have to be all in and really design everything from, like we said, from budget and schedule, and to follow it through. And yeah, it's a lot of hard work, but it needs to be done.
I think also, like, as you said, creating the supports in place for someone, so again, they don't necessarily feel isolated, and there's some sort of community support. And I think, and like, whatever things might be unique to their needs, it's a tricky thing. There's something I recently heard a stat that, even though, again, going back to disability, and it's because I'm doing a research project with respect to disabled creatives, and that yes, 22% general population, but within the WGC, that it's less than 1% of the WGC identify as having a disability. So very disproportionate. So in terms of like bringing that number up, or and this came up during the Being Seen talk at Banff, where I think someone was talking about trying to get more diverse writers in the writers' room and looking for a specific type of disabled writer and not being able to find that. And so just the idea that, you know, it might not exist. So how do you get there? And is that something that you build into, your production budget, that it's going to be a part of it? Are there external funds that exist that can help to fund it? Is it, again, thinking really creatively, this is on the producer side, thinking really creatively about that, how you're financing the project and where the funding could come from. Can that be built in? I think about a project that recently came out. There was funding out of the UK that would allow for mid-career female directors of color to work on project. It would fund half of their salary. They would get to direct half of an episode, and in the process found more than one really amazing person, but again, within the budget, be able to say, you know, we're going to get 2 people and provide this opportunity for 2 people, but we're going to move the money from somewhere else. And also it would be useful because you have the 2 participants and they're able to support each other. And so thinking about that learning experience, like really holistically, where could the money come from? How would it look like? What's going to create the best learning environment? In terms of the outcome, is this a useful outcome for them? In terms of the training and what they're going to have in terms of their real, and will they have support afterwards, are all things, you know, to think about in terms of how to improve your representation behind the camera.
I have something to say. This could be like too big for this, so I apologize. But have you found, like, I just think sometimes like the industry, our own industry constraints make it harder to like hire. For example, let's say on a show, we made a point that we specifically wanted to hire a writer with a disability that was featured in our show. So we like specifically when we found a writer that was like up and coming, you know, all this kind of stuff. We have her, she was great. She co-wrote one of the scripts because it was her first ever and it was a fantastic experience. But then I think after the challenge of like getting a CAVCO number, and it just seemed, I know this is like a bigger issue, but just getting a CAVCO number was just so challenging. And, you know, because she was like, this particular writer was kind of bedridden and like in a hospital and stuff. So we weren't able to really, we try to get that next step. And I just was trying to explain to CAVCO, like, and maybe it's going too far, but I was like, you want diversity and you want to reach out to people, like maybe you have to make it easier to get key creatives and writers. Like I think, especially also we have a show where we're going into Indigenous communities and that kind of stuff, which is wonderful, but there's already like there's a hesitancy to sign releases, right? When you go into the communities, because, you know, they've had a lot of papers put in front of them that are all lies and they sign it. So a lot of them just don't want to sign a release. So it's really, I think it's a challenge as the industry in general. Like there's specific things that need to change if you want to hire authentic diversity, you know. And same with, you know, the whole history of the tax credits, like based on tax credits. Well, this means that people that are permanent residents but not yet defined as, you know, Canadian citizens, you can't hire them. So it's, I think as a key creative, now that I'm like running a production company, you know, we're trying to change things, but there's only so much you can change if you keep running to the same issues, right? I guess that was that's my thing. So I don't think there are a lot of people at the top and real budget restraints that they want to make a change, but then it's like I have to explain to people, well, if they don't have a CAVCO number or if they're not a Canadian citizen, and I feel like horrible, but this is where it comes down to. It's just because it's just how the Canadian film industry is based. So I feel like, again, I always get out of these things and say all of us here have the right intentions, but it's the same people that we need to convince. That's all.
And I think, no, and I mean, I feel like, as you said, there's this idea of making people fit into the existing system, and then that should be good enough. versus, I guess, to what, as you said, like the existing system, and we talk about things like systemic problems, that if there are systemic problems in place that create those barriers, it's not always someone being mean and in your face and saying something. And it's the point of going back to that microaggressions of that, it's not always super obvious, this sort of oppression or sort of systems that kind of limit and marginalize people. But it is those type of things of like the CAVCO number, what you need to go through, or the process, or how easy or not easy it is, and how people are able to submit their work, or the schedule. And, you know, if for example, someone's accommodation is that they need more time, then is there any way that the production schedule could be slowed down for them? Maybe the way that you schedule them, they start the earliest, but then they have their final delivery at the end and you work, you know what I mean? It's sort of in some ways rethinking the system a bit, or leaving it flexible in a sort of way that will allow that flexibility. I think we talked about today that people have the option to pin, you know, so there's a certain flexibility that accommodations are there, but there is a flexibility so people can tailor it as they need to, that even a production. And I think, as you said, in terms of we might have a new bill, and it's someone that is lobbying where you can, or your associations where you can, or your unions where you can. What is the criteria for membership voting, getting on juries for things, getting involved? You know, everybody can't do everything, but if you're in business affairs, maybe you're focused on that area, maybe you're in makeup, you focus on that area, but everyone kind of think being a collective voice in many different stages of the process. And if you can be a model in your production of how you can do it successfully or build it in successfully, maybe there's an officer who helps people get CAVCO numbers. You see that in a lot of funding applications. There's sometimes additional funding or additional people who are there just to help make it more accessible. So is that something that should be built into everything, into every production, that there's an accessibility officer who can help make sure that those needs are done? I think about the personal ID numbers that you need to do in terms of self-identification. Thankfully, you don't have to tell your producer that anymore, and you can do this privately. Is there someone you can privately share your needs and help? I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of brainstorming going into certain lands, but it's what does that flexibility look like? And that was something that came up in terms of writers' rooms, of like why you might not, another reason why you might not have, for example, more disabled writers, because the system isn't necessarily conducive to certain disabilities. So if you ever want to have more of that, they're never going to fit into that box for certain things. So how can the box be adjusted or not be a box or be something else to accommodate for
I think
that?
it's why a lot of people are just like, you know what, it's easier to just go with who I know is going to deliver it quickly. You know, it's going to be the same, you know, this one writer, or the broadcasters are going to just go with this person. And I think it's because it's harder to be flexible, but like you have to kind of take the time into it. But it just becomes kind of trying to convince other people that it's worth, you know, making the change. So I think that's why we're all here. So that's good.
That's a good segue. Yes, it's about collective action. And I think it's a lot easier for organizations to advocate for change than for each individual production or screenwriter to advocate on their own for change. You know, I think your example, Georgina, is a good thing to share with the Disability Screen Office when they are actually up and running, because that's the sort of thing I think they should take on, being the ones to lobby CAVCO for change. And this is like, we'll all work together, and we'll all, you know, especially the people who, you know, come to workshops like this, want to make change. So we'll figure out how to do it. And as I said at the top, it's an ongoing process. But it's now 4 o'clock, Toronto time anyway. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming. If you signed up for other workshops, then maybe I'll see you again in the rest of the week. We've got different facilitators for each one. Georgina's going to be on one of them. So we'll continue some of these conversations, but thank you very much to Jiro and to Kai for leading this one. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.